news. And now for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning, let's bring in a RISE analyst, Dr. Constance Ikoku. Good morning, Constance.
Good morning, Charles. Did you have a good weekend?
I did not have a restful weekend. I was working throughout. You really don't want to know about it.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Now I feel terrible to talk about my weekend.
No, go ahead. I think it will make for a bright contrast.
I was binging on Mary Jane. Do you know the Netflix series? Being Mary Jane. Oh my God, I was binging throughout the weekend. Anyway, Yolanda, how was yours?
Restful, just as yours.
Okay, that's good.
Sorry, Charles.
Sorry, Charles. Sorry, Charles. Get some rest today. Get some rest. All right, to look at the papers with us today, we have Dr. Ibrahim Modibo. He is a media executive and political commentator. Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with this day. There we have U.S.-linked surge in Nigeria's terror attacks to exit from Niger, Chad, says no longer able to monitor their activities in Africa, declares Sahel region global terrorism epicenter. These statements were made by General Michael Langley, the commander of the U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM. He spoke at the African Chiefs of Defense Conference in Kenya over the weekend. Langley claims that since the U.S. left Niger last year, of course on the order of the Niger government, intelligence and counterterrorism support from his country has created gaps which terrorists are now exploiting to launch attacks in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Nigeria and across the Sahel. Complex matter here. Obviously, the U.S. is still pissed that they were asked to leave Niger with their military base. The French were also kicked out. As it is today, African countries are caught in an intricate web of global terror which has shifted from the Middle East and North Africa to the Sahel. And this is what we're dealing with today, and it poses a significant threat to peace and development, Dr. Modibo, isn't it?
Yes, good morning, Dr. Constance, Yolanda, and Charles. Let me appreciate this day as a newspaper. If you look at the content and context of the paper, seems to suggest to any intellectual that picks it up, especially the lucidity of language and also the artistic creativity in terms of syntaxes is out of the ordinary. And I think it's a very commendable effort. Having stated this, General Langley has been lamenting over the sacking of the U.S. troops along the Sahel region, especially Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger.
Military base, actually.
Military bases, yes, military bases. And his lamentation could be attributed to that living because of the fact that they've been having this military cooperation in terms of provision of logistics, in terms of provision of intelligence, you know, in tackling the issues that has to do with these bandits and kidnappers and this Boko Haram and what have you, especially the Islamists, the ISIS and what have you. So it's a song of lamentation in which he is quite, you know, in sync and in tune with the problems confronting these areas as of today. When they left, as if it is being spoiled, you know, by the U.S., there has been these torrential attacks from every angle of the sub-Saharan Africa, especially the Sahel region. Because for one, if you look at the U.S., based on their own assumptions and then their critical examination of issues, they stated that these people wanted to control the coastal areas, to look at the issues of security, where they could just get their hands full on immigration, exploitation of resources, you know, bringing in weapons, and also issues of, you know, trying to you know, form a kind of a government, so to say, because they want, that's what they want actually, is just to see if there's possibility of them to form a government based on ideology or based on religious perceptions. So I think the U.S. is good to go in trying to make this analysis, especially General Langley, and I think there's a need for the sub-region to tighten its belt in the face of all these travesties, all these problems associated with, you know, terrorism, as these people are coming back full swing after the exit of America.
You're correct. There's more needs to be done by the countries involved. Daily Sun, a pressure mounts on 4 PDP governors to join APC, Nigeria's democracy under state capture, as Senate President Wabara. One governor of Delta State, or the governor of Delta State of the People's Democratic Party, we know has already joined the All Progressives Congress. In Akwa Ibom, we hear that the governor is planning to leave the PDP and has told his officials to join him. Some are refusing to do so. If 4 more follow suit, that's, I don't know what's left of PDP then in terms of states that they are in control. This will obviously be injurious to the PDP, isn't it, Dr. Modibo?
Well, as I've told you some time back, PDP seems to be on its way to total collapse if certain parameters, especially in democratic practice, are not observed. Fundamentally, there's a need for PDP as a party that rules this country, a party that's been able to form government at various levels, both the state and local governments, almost spread across, the spectrum of the country for it to be losing its focus. And I think there are some people that are deliberately planning to destroy PDP with a view to align the government at the center to have a one-party state. But I can tell you that Nigeria is not a one-party state country. Nigeria is a country that within 24 hours, political parties can spring up, and they could spring surprises. If you could recall, during the Goodluck Jonathan era, almost all the political parties were in sync and in tune with his support, the religious leaders, youth groups, and look, almost every segment of the country was supporting Goodluck Jonathan. But when the tide turned against him and the party, he lost. So all this, to me, it is just deceptive impunity. We have to, if we are building bridges, we have to build bridges across streams and rivers. And therefore, to me, if the APC is just trying to cut the bridges for a selfish ends, I think it's going to be very unfortunate to our democratic journey. Because as a nation, we need opposition. Wherever there is democracy, there must be opposition. That is the tonic of democracy.
Right.
And therefore, anything short of that, I think it is going to be the greatest travesty of justice, fair play, and democratic tenets.
All right. I mean, you're correct that Nigeria is dynamic. The more you look at, the less you see it. Let's move on to Daily Independent. NDLEA bus syndicate sponsoring pilgrims with cocaine to Hajj arrests kingpins in Kano. According to the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, some of the kingpins serve, or pilgrims rather, serve as couriers who move these drugs to Saudi Arabia on their way to Hajj. They were busted at the Malam Aminu Kano International Airport, and some arrests have been made. I mean, gradually the problem of a drug is on the increase in the country, and it's affecting a lot of young people. So the fight against illegal substance has to be upped, Charles.
Well, this time around, it's as if the reverse is the case. Yes, we do know that in the influx of substances like Canadian Loud, that new popular strain of cannabis, the local varieties, and of course cocaine among the high and mighty is already there. But you see, this time around is the irreverence of it all. Smuggling drugs to the Holy Land is what actually beats my imagination. I mean, some people have actually lost complete regard for the divine. And so when people are going on pilgrimage, to get closer, so to say, to God, others are actually smuggling drugs there. So, well, for this, I'll just say that this is divine justice for those who are involved in it. But it's more like the drug problem is global, and kudos to the NDLEA for busting this one, because it definitely would have given the country a bad name if the couriers had actually succeeded in landing in Saudi Arabia and then getting discovered there by the Saudi authorities.
Let me step in here quickly. You see, Dr. Constance, smuggling of drugs into Saudi Arabia, it attracts death penalty. Yes, they will just cut your head off. They will carry machete, and it's not even through this gun or anything. So the danger is we have to be circumspect of the issues involved, especially the decisions of their courts and also the punishment involved in this drug thing. But yet, our people are still, you know, jumping into the fray to make quick money in the Holy Land. I think it's a very sad development, but we must commend NDLA. Otherwise, a lot of heads must have been rolling on the ground.
That's true, but I also want to say that a lot of people who are used as drug mules are not aware of the consequences of their actions. Many times you hear of stories and reports where people are just innocently, you know, going along on their trip. And I'm not saying that this is the case, but I mean in some other instances, people are going on their trip and they're asked, excuse me, can you please carry this for me? My brother is, you know, he needs this bag, it's urgent, he left his belongings behind. And you know, I've been in a situation like that, except it wasn't drugs, and it's very difficult to say no. Can you imagine seeing a mother crying and saying, please help me, my child is on the other side of the immigration and really needs this package? You can be, you know, victim to these sorts of things. So some people don't really know the consequences of their actions.
Okay, I mean, this is a drug syndicate, and to your point, Dr. Modibo, I'm sure most of these rings, they know that it attracts death penalty, not only in Saudi Arabia, Malaysia and other countries. Yes. So they just want to try their luck. Abuja Inquirer this morning, flood of grief for Kano athletes, muted sorrow for Mokwa disaster. We must have read about the 22 athletes that lost their lives last Saturday in a road crash on their way back from Ogun State. They were returning to Kano. And of course, the flood disaster that has claimed 153 victims in Niger State. I mean, when it comes to these car crashes, those kids were young, you know, that their lives were cut short. And it just shows how much people will lose on a daily basis on road crashes, Yolanda.
Yes, very true. It's very sad. The situation also, you know, I don't know the cause of the crash, but I've heard a few stories here and there. And, you know, we've spoken so many times about, it's not to put the blame on anybody, but the situation with our roads, you know, poor lighting. And, you know, it's just very unfortunate that this incident would happen with such young lives taken at, it's really sad. There's nothing more that I can say to this besides just sympathize with the families that were, you know, affected by this great loss.
You know, the focus of this headline is that, you know, two devastating tragedies, but two contrasting outpour of grief. So it's more like talking about the federal government's response while the athletes returning from the Ogun Sports Festival have received a lot of attention. The victims of the flood disaster in Mokwa seem to have been
overlooked,
neglected, so to say. And well, I say both incidents led to loss of lives. I mean, I saw the images of the Mokwa flood and it was mind-blowing. Houses actually leveled, and then right in the middle of a city you see the river raging through the community. But I mean, it's more like a case of success has many fathers and failure is an orphan. These young people were like sports heroes, you know, winning laurels for their state, and then on their way back home they fell victim to our bad roads and all that. But then, of course, we also need to look at the issues of flooding, because we are getting into the rainy season.
We are in the rainy season already.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move quickly. We'll come back to that.
Dr. Costa, just give me 1 minute. The flood, the victims of the flood is about 200 now, not 150. And
well,
over
depends
over
on the papers. There are conflicting reports.
Yeah, but let us do 2 and 2. And over 500 people are missing. I was thinking by today, maybe the federal government should have declared an emergency to go there. The president should have gone on sympathy. 200 and 500 missing, it's a lot. So when do we have the president going to all these places? Is it when it reaches 1 million?
Okay. A Vanguard newspaper, WAEC, thugs hired by parents assault vice principal for preventing cheating in Ondo State. Wow. This incident happened in Akure. According to investigations, an Android phone was seized or was found on a student during exams, contrary to the rules and regulations. The mother of the student came to fight over the phone. It was returned to the student. Then the brother of the student came to the school and threatened to deal with the vice principal. After school hours, the boys were loitering in the premises, and the proprietor asked the vice principal to report to the police. He returned with the police in a van to arrest the boys, and on their way, the boys waylaid the police van, brought out the vice principal, and beat him up. Arrangements are now being made for the safety and staff, safety of staff and students for the remaining period of the WAEC exams. I mean, what an incident! When I read it, you know, I think it's such a degrading treatment for a teacher and a school administrator. And you wonder, how does this even happen, Charles?
See, first of all, the vice principal was not assaulted in the school premises where he was probably more vulnerable. It was when he went to the police for protection. Imagine the fact that he was in the hands or under the protection of the security officials, and that's when the boys actually, oh, this is ridiculous. On their way back to the station, the boys waylaid the police van, stopped it, brought out Mr. Rotifa and beat him up. How does that sound?
So they were probably outnumbered. Okay, we don't have much.
Excuse me, a gun. You know, these are not these are not normal armed robbers. Even armed robbers will actually be very careful waylaying an armed police van.
Okay.
These are supposed to be regular, ordinary students, I mean, on a mission. So they challenge the police, bring out someone under their care and beat them up. No, there is something. This is an indictment on our security outfits. That shouldn't be happening. So where are we safe?
We have to move on from that story. To the international headlines, Daily Graphic. E-VAT system, GRA signs 3,000 businesses. Ghana Revenue Authority strengthening its electronic value-added tax system. On to the Citizen newspaper. 1 in 4 homes goes hungry. That's about 14 million people in South Africa. Nearly a quarter of households, or 22%, have inadequate access to food in the country. And the worst food problems are found in Cape, Eastern Cape, and Mpumalanga. There's also the story, there's no link or there's no white genocide in South Africa. U.S. President Donald Trump's pastor said this after he had a meeting with the 5 white South African farmers. Yolanda, if you have a brief comment on this true story, very brief, please.
Yes, thank you. I do have a brief comment on this. Really, on the no white genocide, I have to just give a word of caution. We need to really be careful with this headline because it's been going on and on for weeks. This is such a dangerous narrative to push that there's even the possibility of a white genocide. If you remember in October last year, Dr. Constance, we spoke about a farmer who fed workers to pigs, a white farmer who fed workers to pigs. And I hate to go back in history, but it's a perfect reference point. You know, in 2011, when NATO invaded Libya, the justification was that they were protecting civilians. And if we're not careful as well, we could have a bigger issue on our hands. What seems like a laughing matter, like, oh, there's no such thing as white genocide, can actually become a war that could tear a nation apart.
All right, let's look at Daily Express. UK loses control of borders as yearly high of 1,194 crossed the channel in one day. Boats arriving like taxis, as migrants numbers surge. And then we don't have time to discuss that. You know, finally we have to go to the Guardian newspaper. 40 Russian planes hit in a spectacular drone strike. Ukraine keeps getting the help it needs from European allies, and this large-scale drone attack has hit Russia very, very hard. Apparently, talks are not going anywhere, it seems. I'm afraid we have to leave it there. We didn't have enough time to discuss in depth, but Dr. Ibrahim Modibo, media executive and political commentator, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Constance, for spearheading today's newspaper review. That's all we have time for here on Daybreak. I'm Charles Eruka. It's goodbye from me.